Joran, do you have another question?
Yes. Do you have any happy memories that you can recall during your stay at Java?
Java.
Happy memories.
Which happy memories of Java, yeah. It was a Dutch island, and we was made very, very welcome. In fact, I always maintained that the Dutch, especially in Java, they were very much like the Scottish. They were very easy to make friends with. It was more or less a home from home situation. But, spent a year on Java and then got sent home from there.
And Joran, do you have another question?
What would be your message for young adults like me?
Oh, avoid any situation like what we had to go through. It's it can become very emotional.
I get that.
But it's no, I think it's a case of we want to have a war that ends all wars. I hope the last one is just that.
Yeah, Joran, maybe one last question if you have one for Robbie.
Can you describe the moments when you linked up with the Russian soldiers in Germany?
Oh, it was just really a happy occasion. It was very emotional, as I said, and
End of the war, wasn't it?
what?
The end of the war.
It was the end of the hostilities, anyway, put it that way, the end of the war. And it was really something that we was all looking forward to.
Great. Well, thank you, Johan, for joining us. I have a question from Facebook for you, Robbie. Someone wants to know what you remember of the Falaise Gap in Normandy, your experience there.
What do you remember? Not a great deal about Normandy. We landed on Sword Beach. Mm-hmm.
Gets you going, that's the emotional bit.
Oh, yeah. When we landed on Sword Beach, our main objective was to get to the town of Caen. And that's always been a very emotional thing to speak about, because Caen was a very important stage of the city of the war to capture Caen. There's lots and lots of soldiers lost there. That's one of the times it'll come flooding back from time to time.
Well, thank you, Robbie, for sharing that. I know that it's difficult even 75 years later to relive these memories. So I'd like to thank you for sharing them with us again. And I was wondering, you're wearing a few medals and decorations. Maybe you could explain them to us.
There's
Yeah, the one right there.
Top one's a Dutch one.
the top one is the Dutch one. And then there's the France, and there's a medal and a star for France, Germany. There's a medal and star.
No star for Far East. Just a medal for the Far East. Two stars for Europe.
There's 2 stars for Europe. There's one for the
One medal and
one medal, and one medal for the Far East. It
got the Legion d'Honneur.
never got it was from Holland, was it?
No,
France. Oh, the Legion d'Honneur, that's that one.
Don't know if they can see. You cannot
That's
see.
quite the honor, the Légion d'Honneur. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Michelle, who's joining us from Germany, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Do you have a question for Robbie?
Yeah. Hi, Robbie.
Really do.
First of all, I would like to thank you that you're sharing your story and that I'm able to ask you questions. Thank you very much for that.
I hope I can answer them.
So my first question would be, what was your perception of Germany before you went to war, and how did it change over time until now, or did it change at all?
I always thought that Germany was in the same situation as us, where there are a lot of soldiers, and they're there to do a job, and in the best way that they thought fit. And in fact, was all soldiers, and a soldier, he's got to do what he's told. It was a case of you had a job to do and just to get on with it. But no, it's I think a war. It's not a good thing. I don't think I'd recommend it to anybody.
Michelle, do you have another question for Robbie?
Yes, thank you. I would like to know, did you choose to go into military service, or were you drafted?
I was drafted, yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't advise or wish anybody. It's not a good situation to be in. No, it was.
Robbie, we have another question from the audience on Facebook. They want to know if you have any positive stories of moments with Germans throughout your time.
Not actually, because we didn't spend too long in Germany. When the war finished, we were sent away 3 weeks on leave, sent home for 3 weeks, and then drafted out to the Far East, to the island of Java. So we went to India first, and then was on our way to land in Malaysia. But when we was on the ship for Malaysia, the atomic bomb was dropped, and that changed where was to go. Instead of landing in Malaysia, we landed on the island of Java. We spent a year there.
Michelle, do you have another question from Robbie?
Yes, I would like to know, when you came back from war and everything was fine for you when you came back home? What was the first thing you did? Like, what were you missing? What did you do after war? Do you remember anything that made you very happy when you came back?
Well, being driving back with the family, which was after being away for over a year, 2 years. It was nice to be back home. But,
Michelle, maybe do you have another question for Robbie?
Yeah. What does May 8th mean to you personally?
what is what?
What does May 8th mean to you personally?
Say that again.
What does May the 8th today mean to you personally? What does VE Day mean?
Oh, well. I keep thinking of the ones that didn't come back. And I was one of the very, very lucky ones. No, this is
Yeah, of course. And we'd like to thank you for sharing again your stories with us. In a way, what you're doing is a tribute to everyone who wasn't able to come back. So we'd like to thank you for that. We also have a question from the audience again. Someone is wondering if you often go to commemorative events, and if you do, is it important for you to do so?
Do you get that?
no.
Do you often go to commemorative events? Normandy, Holland? Janet?
I've been back to Normandy a couple of times.
See?
Yeah, I've been back to Normandy 3 times now. Holland 3 times. And I still think the Dutch is very much like the Scottish. And,
That's great. I like that Scottish-Dutch bond. It's lovely. Michelle, do you have another question for Robbie?
Actually, no, but I would like to thank you for answering my questions. And I would like to say that it was a huge pleasure and honor to meet you. Thank you very much.
you know, I must say it, I'm a person of very few words.
But those
Yeah.
words have impact, and
Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for joining us. Maybe one last question, Robbie, before we let you go. What message would you have to the youth of today about this period in history, especially on a day like today, like May 8th?
Oh, well, let's all hope that there's never another war as World War II or World War I or II was. Hope it's a war that ends all wars.
Great. Well, thank you. Maybe on that, we'll end the interview with you, Robbie. It was a pleasure to have you, and thank you to Michelle and Joran for their questions. And we'll be back shortly with our next veteran. So.
You're welcome.
Hello and welcome back to Europe Remembers Live, today for May 8th, where we're hosting a number of veterans and asking them questions about their experience of the Second World War, bringing it directly to your homes via Facebook and YouTube. Our next invited veteran is Mervyn Kirsch, and he's joining us from England. Mervyn was 19 years old when he started taking part in the British war effort as part of the UK infantry. He was among the first to land on Gold Beach on the Normandy coast on D-Day. He also recalls a number of stories related to his service in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, in particular in Nijmegen, before crossing into Germany at the end of the war. He was ordered to go to the Pacific at the end of the Second World War in Europe, but he learned that Japan had surrendered before he managed to get there. We're happy to have you here, Mervyn. Can you hear me all right?
Pleased to be here. I wish I was there in person.
Well, we wish you were here too. Maybe to start off, could you tell us a bit about your experience landing in Normandy?
Well, it began, I was supposed to go over on D5, that's what we were told, but the recce reconnaissance party that went first were torpedoed, and only the boss, General Gore, survived. He was picked up and brought back and asked for volunteers to replace them. That's how I got here earlier than scheduled. Got here, I mean, to Normandy. We were told it was night time. We couldn't see anyone else except our own boat. We were told to sleep because it might be the last chance we get to have a good night's sleep. So I lay down on a coiled up rope and I slept until they woke me up about 5 o'clock in the morning. And it was dawn. You could just see the outline of France, the outline of the cliffs. And then for the first time, it really began to dawn on me what landing really meant. There were big shells going overhead both directions, but nobody was firing at me. They didn't think I was worth bothering with. Actually, what had happened, the Germans had been disrupted completely by the landings, and they hadn't reorganized yet. So I was lucky I landed just in that disordered time. But then I realized what was happening, and I would be landing amongst them. But you just carry on. Say a psalm or two, do prayers, and you just carry on. I landed, we waded up, told to go up to the cliff, got to the top, and there were women and old men and children welcoming us with wine, flowers, kisses. I took the kisses and the flowers, but not the wine in case it was poisoned. And then we began being shot at by snipers. So we were told to move on, and we just drove off. From there, for the next few hours, I don't remember anything. Except I found a lovely chateau, which I was supposed to be looking for, something suitable for 1,000 vehicles and 200 drivers. And this was the ideal place. But it was heavily booby-trapped by the Germans before they left 21st Panzer Division. And they'd suddenly left everything behind, their personal things as well. I managed to get some lovely maps. And that's all because the Royal Engineers had to take the bombs, the booby-trapped out of toilets, piano stalls, pianos, all artificial books, all sorts of things like that. You open any of them, a bomb blew up. Not enough to kill you, but enough to blow your fingers off, which was sufficient to put you out of action. Anyway, I don't know what happened then. That's gone completely out of my mind. Not because I've forgotten, but I never did remember. Eventually, the rest of my unit came. Am I still on? Eventually, the rest of my unit did come on. And we were in France. I spent a lot of my spare time where there was someone who was waiting for the breakout, going to the farms, practicing French, which I became very fluent at. Perhaps not a good vocabulary or grammar, but very fluent. I bought eggs and cheese, milk, and I lived on that most of the time. Then we moved off when the breakout came in August. I moved on to Holland, moved on to Belgium, and then on to Holland at Nijmegen. I followed the 30 Corps up to Nijmegen. We got bogged down there for a while. I was in an old age home also in a place called Boom near Antwerp, Belgium. That was the last place before Nijmegen. That was hit by the first one of the very first V1s that the Germans fired. But just got out in time. I was at Nijmegen in an old age home. I didn't see any Dutch people there. None of them came out. They were afraid to come out because before us there'd been French Canadians and they fired in the air, had bonfires and ripped the place to pieces and were rather primitive, shall we say. The Dutch stayed away. They thought we were going to be the same, but we weren't. They carried on from there, went into Germany, to Luxembourg into Germany. I got as far as a place called Celle, a town called Celle, past Hanover. It's almost in the centre of Germany. CEWE, very old city. And I found I was waiting to be picked up by a unit I didn't know to go to Berlin to get rid of Germany's poison gas bombs and shells in the Baltic. But while I was waiting, I didn't know who was going to pick me up, and apparently it turned out and they didn't know where I was. So there was this misunderstanding. I was there 2 weeks. I spent most of that time outside Belgium talking to those who were fit enough to stand and walk. They were going to walk to Hanover Station, which is a central railway hub in Germany, hoping to get news of their families, their friends, their townsmen, and news of what's been going on in the world while they've been locked up in Bergen-Belsen. There's those who survived and were strong enough. But from there, I got an order: don't go to Berlin, you've missed the boat. Come back and we will invade Japan, prepare to invade Japan. It didn't say will you, it says you will. They got the wording the wrong way round, I think. Very impolite. So I came back. I was put on the train. I've got a pass to get on the train. The train was boarded up, so you couldn't see out the windows, and Germans couldn't fire in. There were young Germans who'd been issued with rifles and told to kill any servicemen, Allied servicemen they could find. So it was boarded up. The train was dark inside, with very little light, nothing to do with sleep. So for 30 or 36 hours, I slept. When we got out the other end, in Bruges, we were told the war was over. I was very disappointed. I missed it. Celebrations had been going on the day before, still going on actually in Bruges, but I had to carry on to the UK to prepare for Japan, invasion of Japan. They were celebrating in the UK then. I was supposed to be going to Japan, but the Japanese heard I was coming, and of course they surrendered. Some people say it was something to do with an atom bomb, but I think they knew I was coming. So I missed all the celebrations in England as well. Not all of them, but most of them. And in the end, I didn't go to Japan, obviously. I went to Egypt instead, spent my last 6 months in the army in Egypt. When I came home from Egypt, I had not been eating very much, living on salad once a week, and I'd gone down to 7 stone. I'm very, very brown, but I got home a day earlier than I intended. I knocked at the door, my mother answered and said, "Can I help you?" And I had to tell her who I was. She didn't recognise me. But I was fit, fighting fit. And a few months after that, I left the army. That's my army career in a nutshell. It took a lot longer than that.
Yeah, but it's a very good summary. Can you hear me all right, Mervyn? Can you hear me?
I can't hear anything.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Well, we have our next person to ask you a question. Marine is calling in from Belgium. She's joining us now. Hello, Marine. Do you have a question for Mervyn?
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes. It's silence.
Now you can.
Did you hear what I said? Or
Yes, but can you hear me?
I can hear you now, thank you.
Okay, great, perfect. Can you hear Marine too?
Hello.
Hello, Marine.
Nice to meet you. I'm very pleased to be able to talk with you.
Shake hands.
Nice to meet you. I'm from Belgium, so it's nice to talk to you. So this is my first question. What was your own personal motivation to join the army in the war during the World War II?
Maybe to destroy Germany, in a nutshell. Germany should have been destroyed in 1937-38, because I couldn't persuade the government to go. I went to demonstrations, but I couldn't persuade the government to go to war then, and I couldn't persuade them to arm, because if we had armed, there wouldn't have been a war. And that's as simple as that. I was glad to get into the army. I didn't volunteer, I was at school. I left school because of the evacuation. I got various odd jobs. And when I was 18, I was called up, which I was pleased. I thought I would go in. I went to training by the Black Watch, which is the toughest British regiment that was then. I got training for 6 weeks, and during that time there was aptitude tests and questionnaires and all sorts of things. Just see what was most suited for in the army. I wanted to go in the Air Force because my big brother was in the Air Force in North Africa at that time, so it didn't count. They tested all sorts of things. I told them my hobbies were map drawing. I was following the Eastern Front, the Soviet front in Germany, with a huge map which I'd drawn with rivers and towns and railways, roads. I was following that, so I thought I'd go into the engineers, and I was told I probably would go into the engineers to do map drawing. But when it came to the final, after the end of the 6 weeks, I was told, we were all told, Courage 1, 2, 2, go to G, go to B, all around the parade ground. And I was told then, by the people there, that was Ordnance Corps. There's a difference between ordnance, which is stores, and ordinance, which is maps. They're not one eye missing. But when I complained, I was sort of too late to do anything about it. Somebody made a misspelling. So I went into the Ordnance Corps. That is where I spent my army life.
Do you have another question for Mervyn?
Yes, of course, I have. So I forgot to say, but happy VE Day. This is the second question. What was the most joyful or funniest moment during the war that you remember?
Most joyful?
Yes.
I think VE Day. Although I missed it the day after, at any rate.
Yeah.
Obviously, I knew the Germans were coming to an end because the British Army, Americans, and the Russians were all in Germany. It was only a matter of time. When I finally got the word that it was over, I would have celebrated, did celebrate voluntarily and all by myself. But that was the most relief. I know Japan was still at war. That didn't have the same feeling for me. It was a long way away and we weren't at risk in Britain as we were from the Germans. And I had no personal grudge apart from the war of the Japanese, nothing personal. I was pleased the war was over. The European War, the BJ came a bit later. As you know, they surrendered when they knew I was coming. I told them.
Marianne, do you have another question for Mervyn?
Yes. This is my other question. So, do you have anything to say to people living a rough time with the crisis of the COVID-19 that you would have loved to hear during your time in the war? Something nice to hear during your rough time during the war.
I'm sorry, I don't quite catch what you want me.
Do you have any words or messages for people living through what is also a difficult time right now with the coronavirus and the...
Well, it's different from the war, I must say. During the war, we knew where the Germans were, and if we didn't know, we didn't see them, we knew where they were. This little so-and-so, we don't know, we can't see, we've got no intelligence as to where they are, and we don't know how to deal with them, don't know how to shoot them. It's a very different thing. It's far more worrying from that point of view. You know, they may suddenly disappear. I don't know where they go. They have to go to Mars, but they suddenly disappear. It's a different thing entirely, but it brings out the same bonhomie, if you like, of the people. People share all dangers. They tend to get together, close together, work together, live together. At the moment, we're living separately, but that's beside the point.
Great. Thank you, Marine. We have Geneviève now from the United Kingdom who has a question for us, I think.
Yes, I do. Hi, Mervyn. So nice to meet you, and thank you so much for taking time out of your VE day to chat to us. It's a real honour, and thank you for your service as well. I wanted to ask, it mentioned in your profile that you met the survivors of Bergen-Belsen, and I wanted to ask how that affected you, both at the time during the war and afterwards.
Well, I knew about Bergen-Belsen and other Buchenwald and Auschwitz. Didn't know the extent of it, that was anything. It was in our newspapers in the Daily Telegraph in 1942, June 42. I've got a copy of it. So it was known. The only thing we didn't know is how many people were involved, how large scale it was. I didn't know that when I got to Belsen. I saw the people coming out, and it was shocking seeing them. They were very thin, obviously, but they had to walk 40 miles to Hanover, but they had the guts and the intention to walk that far if they could have. A lot of them had walked from other camps. They'd been marched westwards, so they had to walk for miles or be shot. The Germans were the best enemies to have. I've got one German friend now. He's writing a book, and he asked me to write a foreword for it, and I did. A rather scathing one about German soldiers and what they hold of them. But he put it in, word for word, and he's now my German friend.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you so much.
Do you have another question?
Yes, so you mentioned that you missed VE Day, Mervyn, and when you learned the war was over, you mentioned that it was joyful. Did it feel like a victory to you? And if so, why? Or if it didn't feel like a victory, what did it feel like to you?
It felt like a victory. It was joyful. I missed the actual beginning of the celebration, the main explosion of joy that went on everywhere. In Bruges, because I saw some of it, but then I had to move on and get another train. No, I did enjoy it. It was lovely to see it, and lovely to see everyone's own joy, everyone else's joy and relief that it was all over. The Germans had gone, not coming back. And I used the word German rather than Nazi because there wouldn't have been any Nazis if there weren't Germans to back them up and support them. So, it was a very good feeling. One of relief. The other good feeling, of course, opening the second front, D-Day itself. Although that was fearful, it was marvellous seeing that at last we're going to hit back, try to hit back. As it happened, we did. And it resulted in D-Day, which was the final victory over Germany, the end of it. Till the years, but we won't go into that.
Geneviève, do you have another question for Mervyn?
Yes. So you mentioned that at the end of the war, when you went back, your mum didn't recognise you. How did it feel that your mum didn't recognise you, and did you find it easy or difficult leaving the army after the war?
It's always difficult leaving the army. I was surprised my mother didn't recognise me, but then I realised how much I'd changed since I last saw her. I went out, I mean, you can see it, you've got somewhere a photograph of me I saw. quite fat, not fat, but quite strong, normal youth. I came back very, very skinny and very, very dark, suntanned. And for the moment, she wasn't expecting me. For the moment, she didn't recognise me, only momentarily. That was very nice. What was the other part? Sorry.
I said, did you find it easy or difficult leaving the army?
Leaving the army or living in it?
Leaving the army
Leaving
after
the
the war.
It takes quite a while for the transition. You're looking over your shoulder for the military police all the time. Have you got your shirt done up, your collar done up? You've got your hat on straight, and can you stay out after 1 minute after midnight? It takes a few weeks to adjust to civilian life, and then you're free to do what you like, or what you can. I also had a job trying to find work. My parents wanted me to go back to school, to college, to catch up where I'd left off and then continue from there. I was being an idiot, didn't want to be a burden to them financially, although they said they didn't mind. So I didn't. I tried to find jobs. I wrote after jobs and I got back replies where I did get a reply at all. They were saying I was too old. Oh, too old, 21. They wanted someone boys of 18 to train in their way. Well, obviously I've been in the army, that meant nothing whatever to them. To the big groups, Littlewoods, Master Spencer, terms like that. And they just wouldn't entertain it. But I tried various things, selling books, encyclopedia door to door, which was quite nice, but it had to be in the evenings and weekends, which I didn't like, didn't fit in with any social life. In the end, I had a nice square piece of cloth, about 4 inches square, somebody showed me, my brother showed me. It was imitation fur, new words. And I got him to make up 3 coats. He manufactured 3 coats, different colours and styles. And I started selling those around the stores, round all the shops. Something that was a marvellous feeling. I was welcome wherever I went because it was so much better than fur and it wasn't animal. And I liked it better. That was very good financially as well as socially. All over Britain, to America, to the Soviet Union, even got an invitation from the Soviet Union to go there and sell it to them. I went there very pro-Soviet. I came back very relieved to be, once I was in the air, I was very relieved. It was a very, very oppressive place. And it reflected on everyone we spoke to. They had 3, negotiating the contract with 3 girls, young girls, younger than you even, I think. One was a buyer, one was the interpreter, and one was the chief engineer, as they described her, probably technician. And everything went through the interpreter. My comments, my brother's comments, their comments, until for 3 weeks negotiating. At the end, we got the contract. My brother went in the next room to sign it, and I was left talking to these 3 girls, and all 3 of them spoke perfect and fluent English, not a sign of an accent. So I said, why on earth did you need an interpreter? He said, we have to have an interpreter, in case we don't understand. I realised then that she was a KGB girl, keeping an eye on them, not interpreting. And also in the streets, people we spoke to were very friendly to anyone came anywhere near us, then they left us immediately. Both in Moscow and Kiev. I've got to Moscow, if I can carry on. I got to Moscow the moment the Gagarin was in space, the first man in space. He was only up for 1 hour. And everyone was busy listening to his talking from space. That was a marvellous speaking. They had 1 million people on the streets within that hour. Very well volunteer, very spontaneous. Except they obviously must have been organised with leaflets and banners and flags and that. Photographs of him. Anyway, that's another story.
Geneviève, do you have another question by any chance?
Yes. In terms of you mentioned, we already asked you about the Victory in Europe Day, but you also experienced VJ Day. What for you was the biggest difference between VE Day and VJ Day?
VE Day was the one that took away the immediate threat to us. Germany was on our doorstep through France, a bit Holland, Belgium. Japan wasn't a threat to us. It was a threat to the empire, but not to us, not to us as individuals. It was remote. Of course, when the Japanese heard that was coming, they surrendered. We were very pleased. It really was. That was the end of all war. They carried on in Malaya and other places, Indonesia. They had smaller wars everywhere. But as a world war, that was the end of it, and that the finality. War was over. But the European war was far more personal.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Geneviève. I have a question for you, Mervyn, sorry, about what you do today. So I know that you travel quite often to Normandy with student groups, and you've done it for a number of years now. And I was just wondering if you could share some of your experiences of showing them Normandy and what you think that youth of today get out of that kind of moment.
Well, first I'll go back to Normandy for a number of years, many years. I've been to Holland as well. I go to the places that I had been to, but I also go to the cemeteries, the military cemeteries. And the biggest thrill I get, if it's a thrill experience, is that unlike those who are there, buried there, I'm free to leave. There's a big difference. I'm very conscious that I was lucky that I'm not still there. I have the option of leaving. That's about it, really. I go there, we celebrate. Of course, it's a good time as well as bad. We celebrate the victories and with the local people, whether it's in Holland or Normandy. They're well treated, well looked after, and well appreciated. As stupid folk are appreciating us now. No, it's a lovely feeling to know it was all over, to feel that I contributed to it. I had help. I wasn't alone, but there were other people who helped me. But I did win the war.
Of course. We have Solène here with us now from France, and she has a few questions for you as well. So, Solène, take it away.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much for being here. I feel very lucky to be able to talk to you. I have a question about D-Day. Did you realize what was going on? Because there were so many false alarms before. Did you realize on the day that you were actually going to Normandy?
No, we didn't know where we were going. We called it the Second Front. But I went to the unit almost as soon as I joined the army, did my training, to a unit that was being formed for the Second Front, whenever and wherever that would be. So I knew what the purpose was. When they finally got down to the south of England, we were sealed off from the rest of the world. We only had phones and letters in those days, and the phones were cut, and the letters went through the officers, so they couldn't say anything. I lost my thread. Sorry.
It's okay. Did you realize on the day that it was really going to happen?
Yeah, while we were there about 5 weeks, I think. We were given all details. I was given, not everyone was apparently, I didn't realise that at the time, of where we're going to land, not the geographical place, but relative to other units. We're going to land at a place called Gold Beach and Jig Sector, and someone's going to be on our right, and so-and-so's going to be on our left, the Americans are going to be still further over to the right. But that's all as far as placing is concerned, and we're going to land by sea, obviously. And we were given a lot of other information about what to find, what to expect when we landed, and we finally got ashore. We got money, as far as the dating is concerned, the same thing. Everything was rated on D-Day, whenever that would be. D-, D+, D+, D+1, D+2, D+3. And we got all the specialised equipment that we need for landing without any food support, material support, material. But, we'd be on our own, in fact, the first few days. There was a reconnaissance unit that went over before me from my unit, 10 of them. They were all killed except one. That put a blow. One of them was my immediate officer. So I had to manage, which I did very easily, without him. He was a very nice chap, actually. I liked him. And we just carried on. We landed and did what we could, what we did.
Okay.
So then, do you have another question?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have a more personal one, if you don't mind. Because my great-grandparents were deported, I was asking about the story you told about giving chocolate when you arrived in Berchtesgaden. Did you have a chance to talk to them to hear the stories, or was it just like moving on?
Well, I'm Jewish, so I had an extra reason to be interested in the people. And I went there. I didn't speak German. I picked up a few words, but only a few words. I'd already learned French. I learned at schoolboy French. I knew how to conjugate verbs. I couldn't converse, but while we were waiting in Normandy for the breakout, 3 months, I went to the farms to get eggs and milk. I spent the evenings there where I could, speaking French all the time, and I was quite proficient. So I could speak French, I could speak English. Those who, amongst the ex-prisoners who could speak French or English, it was fine. We could talk. The others, it was very difficult. It was sign language, and I didn't speak any Yiddish. So that didn't help. Didn't help with German. But those I could speak to, and I spoke to several, with quite a few dozen. They wanted to go to Israel. Every one of them, except one, they wanted to go to South America, marry a non-Jewish girl, have non-Jewish children, so that they wouldn't be treated the same way.
Yeah.
But they were in a very bad, weak state, even those that intended to walk 40 miles to Hanover for information. They were in a weak state, and I thought, well, I'll get something together. And those that I haven't seen for a long time is chocolate. We as soldiers had a bar of chocolate and 50 cigarettes every week. I used to change my cigarettes. I didn't smoke. Change my cigarettes to chocolate. So I had 2 bars. And the way they grabbed it, I went back the next day, is collecting from my friends, my comrades, chocolate, all I could. And I took quite a lot of bars of chocolate there. And of course, they were pleased with that. And I was delighted to see their pleasure. But later, months later, I learned that was probably the worst thing to give someone who's been on starvation diet. Their stomachs can't deal with it. It just blocks their stomachs, block their digestive system, may even kill them. So I don't know what happened to them. But that was unknowing. It wasn't like the Germans intending to kill them.
Well, I think chocolate was a very nice touch anyway, even if you didn't know, we learn after. So yeah, of course. But I think it's sweet that I can imagine my grandpa having that if he had died. He died a few days before the Americans, I think, came. But it's nice to hear that. Actually, I have another question, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Thank you. Did you ever come back to Europe after this? Not for Normandy or anything, but just for you, for vacation or something like that?
Well, I met my wife and married her in 1949. So that's 15 months ago. So 69 years married. We went on the continent. We used to drive down, usually France or Spain, because of the warmth. Switzerland we went to Holland once. Went to Holland once, I remember. I forgot the name of the place, a long name on the coast. And we saw the chairs on the beach with the sides and the hoods of them, obviously expecting cold winds. So we thought, this is not the place. But although we booked there, we booked out and drove to back to Spain. It was a long drive. We used to go by car a lot until the package airlines began. Then it was cheaper to go by air. Not so convenient, but cheaper, quicker. We used to go travelling. It was only probably the last 10, 15 years that I've been going back as a pilgrim to Normandy and more recently to Holland. As long as they ask me, I'll come. Belgium, funnily enough, never asked us. Nothing done as far as I know.
Well, maybe now they will after seeing you here.
Maybe. I've got the Légion d'honneur from France. I've got the Dutch. I've got the Dutch medal, Liberation medal, but nothing from Belgium. They haven't issued one as far as I know.
Well, maybe it's coming.
I'm waiting. I'm looking at the time. Haven't got much time left.
Well, Mervyn, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to thank Solène, Geneviève, and Marine for asking some very interesting questions. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll be back very shortly with our next witness.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone. Good luck to you, and a happy VE Day, and onwards.
Thank you. Welcome back to Europe Remembers Live. Our next witness is from Sunderland in the north of England. So we're changing tracks a bit now after talking to two veterans who were part of the D-Day landings and the Allied advance into Western Europe. We're now shifting to the home front, so in the UK. In the early years of the war, in 1940, 1941, the Battle of Britain is very well known. And part of that was the Blitz. And of course, the Blitz is most famous maybe for what happened in London. But the industrial areas across the north of England were also impacted greatly by the Luftwaffe's campaigns. So we have with us today Anne Robson, who's joining us from Sunderland. Anne was 9 when the war began and was 15 when it ended. And she grew up, of course, in Sunderland, between the Tyne and Wear rivers, in one of the largest shipbuilding towns in the UK at the time. Anne has vivid memories of the bombings, the rationing, the evacuations, as well as daily life with treats and games in the streets. She witnessed the social effects firsthand when over 700 women in her community became part of the war effort. And she also has very special insights given that her family, her mother and her aunt, worked in classified and sensitive information during that period. So I'd like to welcome Anne. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi.
Hi.
Before we start, I'd like to wish you a very happy birthday because I know that
Thank
yesterday you
That was
turned
yesterday.
90. So 90 years young, plus a day.
That's right.
Great. Well, and maybe to start, you could describe us a bit your first experiences of the war when you were 9 years old.
It's all right. Was that yours or mine?
I think that was yours.
Oh, my friend's answering in the porch.
Okay, great.
First of all, I'd like to say that I wasn't living in Sunderland at the time. I was living in South Shields, which is about 5 miles away from here. I didn't come to live here until I got married. But South Shields is on the River Tyne, which might be more familiar than the Weir, I hate to say. But it always happens, doesn't it? But it was shipbuilding, so it was heavily bombed. So do you want to know my experiences now, or?
Well, I think maybe we'll go to our first person who wants to ask you a question.
Oh, right.
I think we're joined by Lily, who's 10 years old.
Yes.
Hi, Lily.
Just about the age that I was.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
Lily, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, so during World War II, what stuff did you have to do when you were a kid in your house?
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
What kind of activities would you have in your house?
Activities? Oh, practically nothing. I had myself to entertain, and I was very good at entertaining myself. In the bedroom, there was a long mirror, and I used to give performances in front of the mirror. I used to sing and dance to myself. There were nothing like games to play, board games, yes, with family perhaps, but it was all self-entertainment. I read quite a lot. No television, of course, no computers, no iPads. I once made a post office set and drew loads of squares on paper, drew a picture of the king in each square, put in 1 penny, that would be the price of the stamp, then got a pin and perforated down the line so you could pull it. Sounds tame, doesn't it? But I enjoyed quizzes and would buy quiz books and learn all the answers. I enjoyed music and would teach myself songs. Sounds quite boring, but I made my own entertainment. That's what it was. I nearly, can I just tell you the story? I nearly came to America during the war. We had friends in Portland, Oregon, on the West Coast. And when war was due, these friends said that I would be very welcome to go across. So the government organized ships for evacuees to be taken across to the States. So I had a medical, I passed the medical, but the first ship was full. So I was due to go on the second boat. So the first ship was the city of Benares, and it was sunk by a German U-boat, and many of the children drowned. So when my mother heard this, she said, "No way are you going." And I cried. I really cried because I wanted to go to the States. I fancied I'd seen these people before matches where they stood with pom-poms and did various acts, and I really wanted to do that. And many, many years later, I tracked down the house in Portland, Oregon, where I would have gone, and I found where I would have gone if I'd been an evacuee. So I had to stay at home and was evacuated in this country. But I've been to the States many times since, and I have a great affection for it.
That's
So I
lovely to hear.
nearly finished
Lily, do you have another question for Anne?
Yes?
Lily, are you still with us? I think we're having some technical issues. So maybe while we try and figure that out, I would like to know more about the Blitz when it came to Sunderland. Do you have any specific memories of that moment? Because I know a lot of the town had been destroyed.
Oh, yes. Yes, it was obvious that war was coming way before. So I was going home from school one day and I saw a barrage balloon being erected, a great big, massive, massive balloon. And it had strings attached, and the strings, I think, were made of wire. And apparently this was to stop the German planes coming too near the ground. But I don't know if they really did any good, because all they did was release the bombs from higher up. But the bombs nearly always came at night. And we had outside at the back of the house, we had like a room where you're supposed to go and wash your clothes, but we had extra bricks put round, and that was supposed to keep us safe from the bombs. But sometimes my mother would say, "We won't bother going out. We'll get under the stairs," because under the stairs there was a very, very large cupboard, and we would all squat into this large cupboard and stay there until the bombing was over. And if the bombing went on after 10 o'clock at night, we didn't have to go to school the next day till later. So we hoped that the bombing went on for just that little bit longer. I know, mad.
We have Fabio and Larissa here joining us from Austria, and they had a few questions for you as well.
Right.
Hi, guys. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, can you hear us?
I can.
Hi.
Perfect. Hi, Anne.
Hello there.
It was your birthday recently, right?
It was.
So happy birthday.
Thank you.
Our question was, did you or how did you celebrate your birthday during the war?
Oh, during the war. Well, you hardly know what happened. My mother would make a cake of some description. And if you were very lucky, there was a bit of icing on top. And you would invite one or two friends round, and they would sing happy birthday to you and give you a present of some description. But it was just a day. And I don't think there was really much fuss made about it. She would possibly give you a card. But as I say, it was just another day, really.
But how about the one in 1945? I think that must have been pretty special.
Well, that one was perhaps a little different. I was too old at the age of 15 to join in the street parties. That was for kids. And we went round and looked at them. But I went with the youth club at night onto the local hills. Not a very high hill, but, you know, a hill. And built a bonfire, lit the bonfire. I'm not quite sure why, but it seemed a good idea at the time. And then came home, but my mother had always said, when the war's over, I'm going to leave the lights on all night. Because, of course, the blackout was something that we had to follow. And there were air raid wardens, and we used to call them little Hitlers because they felt as if they had more power than anybody else. They would walk along the street, and if there was a chink of light, bang on the door, get that light out.
Oh.
So my mother said she'd leave the lights on, so I was going to bed, and I put all the lights on, and she went and put them off. And I said, but you promised. She says, oh, don't be daft, girl, go to bed. But didn't argue, but I was so upset. But I must tell you this about the blackout. We were coming back from friends, and they'd given us a present, very valuable one, was an egg, because you got one egg a week, you know, but they gave us an egg. And as we're coming along in the blackout with our gas masks and torches, my mother stood on something. It was an onion. So she said, look, I found an onion. And there was nobody around, nobody to give it to. So she says, well, we'll have to take it home. So we took the onion home and wondered what to do with it, you know, between the three of us. There's my mother, my auntie, she was my mother's sister, and myself. So when we got home, the door wouldn't open properly. Well, we'd heard about burglars coming in and then sticking a chair against the door so you couldn't get in. So as we pushed the door, it made a noise. So we knocked next door and we said, we think there's a burglar in the house. So this big hunky neighbour pushed. It wasn't a burglar. It was a scrubbing brush and a note from another friend. I was out today and stood in a queue and got 2 scrubbing brushes. So I thought you'd like one. So my mother said, what a marvellous day. An egg, an onion and a scrubbing brush.
Couldn't be better.
It couldn't be better.
Larissa, do you have another question for
Yeah.
Anne?
Because you mentioned your mother, and we read online that your mother and your aunt worked in the shipping industry, and it was with a lot of sensitive information. And
but she must have done, yeah. My father died when he was 2, so there was no question of him being in the war. And sometimes she said, I'm glad he didn't live to do this, because my uncle, who was almost his twin brother, they were very, very close. He was in, and got a quick photo of him. He was a lieutenant commander.
Oh.
And decorated so many times. Yeah, she was in shipping, and my auntie was in Bailey Bridges. If Bailey Bridges, anything to you? Or they made bridges that if the forces came to a place that was difficult to cross, these bridges were almost portable. They threw them across. So they both did war work. But when they came home, they mostly complained about the men they worked for and would turn to me as a child and say, never go to work in an office, not where there's men around. Because they were the bosses, and the women were regarded as the shorthand typists, sort of, you know, the underlings, as you might say. And the talk would be of lunch times, what queues they'd been in, what they'd managed to get, if they'd managed to have any time for any lunch, and was little about the actual work. They didn't talk very much about the work. But because there were 2 women together, they got in the kitchen and did the dishes and the meals. And I sort of listened into their conversations and cut out when it got too boring. But it was...
I think we've got Lily back, so I think we'll switch back to her to see if she has another question for you.
Right.
Lily, are you there?
Yes.
Hello. Do you have another question for Anne?
So like, what if, like, was there like much like different kind of toys made then?
I couldn't hear that. It's a bit. The sound
Lily's asking what kind of toys you had to play with, or if you had to make your own.
Oh, toys. I had a teddy bear. There were very few toys available, really. I can't really remember. That we played board games like snakes and ladders and that sort of thing. But actual toys, I had dolls. And I used to make cardboard dolls out of a cereal packet, draw a doll, and then make clothes for it and stick them on. There were very few toys to actually buy. You sometimes had to make skipping ropes. I had them a lot. And balls, I played ball games. But actual toys, very, very few.
You had to get creative.
I think even before the war, it was. I didn't have a bicycle till I was 12, and that was second-hand. It was a relation who gave me her old one. What did I do? I entertained myself. Have you gone?
You hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I think we're having a. Oh, there we go. That's fine.
All right.
We have Geneviève joining us as well. I don't know if Geneviève, we can get you up on the screen.
It's come on now, yes.
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 Geneviève, do you hear us?
Yes, I do. I do hear you.
Okay. I don't.
Hi.
There you are.
There I am.
Do you have any questions for Anne?
I do, but first of all, happy birthday, Anne.
Thank
I
you.
hope you had a really nice day. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences with us. I'm really grateful and absolutely fascinated by everything you've said so far. My question is, leading on from what others have asked you about your mum and your sister, your aunt, sorry, working for the shipping industry. A lot of women joined the workforce during the war because obviously a lot of the men were off fighting.
That's right.
They were needed. Do you remember seeing any changes in the community happening because women were at work, and did they last after the war in your experience?
No, I didn't notice that personally because my mother had to work regardless. She had no choice, so there was no money coming in. So she worked before the war. So it wasn't a change that way. As I say, I was evacuated to the country, which is a different world to me. And then another relation said she'd be very happy for me to move slightly nearer the school. And then we discovered it's because if I hadn't gone, she'd have had to go and work in a factory. But because she had an evacuee, she didn't have to. But yes, there were changes, but I wasn't aware of them because I finished up being a primary school teacher. And up till the war, I believe when you married, you had to leave. The same if you worked in a bank, you had to leave if you got married. So the war changed all that. I'm sort of a feminist, and I wouldn't have liked that very much, I think, to be told because you're married, you have to give up your job. But that was, the war switched that definitely because they realized that women were valuable all over the place, as we are.
I can't disagree with you there. Thank you so much.
I think it was with being brought up in an all-female household, maybe. I don't know. But fancy having to give up your job because you're married. I've lost your picture again.
Oh, I think you're back. Geneviève, do you have another question?
Yes. So I did a history degree and found out when I was studying my degree that obviously rationing meant that, as you mentioned earlier, you only had one egg a week and not a lot of access to the kinds of foods that we take for granted in the supermarket. Like today, like I really like pineapple.
Oh, my favourite.
So my question to you is, what did you never get to eat because of rationing that you really enjoyed once rationing ended, and what was it like when rationing ended and you had all of these new things available to you?
It didn't happen overnight. It was very, very gradual, because I went to college in 1948 and there was still rationing. And towards the end of the war, they even rationed bread, which didn't worry me too much. But fruit I missed. But with my mother being in a shipping office, they did have fruits that came in occasionally from the States, I believe. We got cocoa powder from there too. I don't know why cocoa powder, but still. But I liked oranges, and it was very, very rarely you could get an orange. There was maybe you'd go to the marketplace on a Saturday and there was a fruit stall. And if he had oranges, you would stand in the queue, he would give you one. So my auntie would stand in the queue, come to me, give me the orange, then go back in the queue. And he would say, "You've been here already, go away." And she said, "It must be my sister, we look very much alike." And my mother, in my mother's office, the boss would call them in. They had to stand in the line like naughty school children. And he would say, "How many in your family?" 3. And he would dole out 3 oranges. So my mother didn't have paper bags. She would stuff them up a jumper or something, carry them home on the bus, hoping nobody would smell them, and put them in the wardrobe. But I got every one of the 3, obviously. And my auntie came in one day and she got a chicken. And she stuffed it up a jumper because nobody would wrap it up. And you had to stand on the bus, they would squat as many on. There was none of this health and safety business. Squat on the bus. And the bus was going all over the place and she was stumbling about, trying to hold on to the chicken. And the bus driver said, "No dancing on the bus or I'll put you off." Joking, of course. But you'd carry newspaper around with you in case you saw something that needed wrapping up. So my auntie joined a queue, it was fish. So the lady at the counter said, "You can't have any fish unless you've got newspaper to wrap it in." The lady in front of me, auntie, started to cry. She didn't have any newspaper. So my auntie gave her half hers. If you saw a queue, my instruction as a child was, "There's some money. If you see a queue, join it and get what they've got." But of course, some things were on coupons. So you could have what you like as long as you paid for the coupons. Clothes were on coupons. You couldn't just go and buy any clothes. I can't remember how many coupons for whatever, but I know handkerchiefs. You got 4 handkerchiefs for 1 coupon. But if you knew somebody in a drawing office, you could get some of their old plans, boil them out, and all the purple came out of it. And then it was vaguely soft, and you would cut it into sizes of handkerchiefs, and we were never they always finished up in the wrong shape, triangles and all sorts. And when I went to college at the age of 18, my mother had been to an Army and Navy store and got 2 blankets. And one was made into a dressing gown for me, and one was made into a coat. And she said, "I'll put some red tape around the dressing gown to make it look pretty." And parachutes you could make into pajamas. And they were horrible. They were so scratchy.
It doesn't sound great. But
Yeah.
It's still a story of resourcefulness and guile and making do with what you have. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, not at all.
We're almost out of time now for this session. So I'd like to thank Anne, Geneviève, Larissa, and Fabio, and Lily for joining us and asking all their questions. Again, Anne, happy birthday. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and have a great day.
I've got a letter here from the King, 8th of June, 1946. Can I read it quickly? "Today, as we celebrate victory, I send this personal message to you and all other boys and girls at school. For you've shared in the hardships and dangers of a total war, and you've shared no less in the triumph of allied nations. I know you'll always feel proud to belong to a country which was capable of such supreme effort, proud, too, of parents and elder brothers and sisters who by their courage, endurance, and enterprise brought victory. May these qualities be yours as you grow up and join in the common effort to establish among the nations of the world unity and peace. George, the King."
Poignant words then and poignant words now, still today. Thank you very much, Anne.
Right,
what a
thank
wonderful way
you.
to end this.
Bye.
We'll be right back with our final veteran for this section, and we'll see you very soon. Hello, and welcome back to Europe Remembers Live. After our first two veterans, two Brits, who shared their experiences of Normandy and the Allied invasion of Western Europe, and our last witness, Anne Robson, who shared some stories about life on the home front in the UK, we're switching now to our next veteran, who is from Canada. We have Dr. Rolly Armitage with us. He joined at age 17, joined the Canadian Forces at age 17, and was part of the 3rd Medium Regiment, the Royal Canadian Artillery. He arrived 10 days on the front after the D-Day landings and participated in the Battle of Normandy and was wounded south of Caen in late July 1944. Later, he participated in both the liberation of Belgium and the Netherlands, as well as the Battle of the Scheldt. And Rolly joins us from his farm just outside Ottawa. Rolly, can you hear me?
Yes, I do. I can see it too.
Great. That's good. How are you doing today?
I am relatively well.
Relatively, okay.
Relatively well. You know, you see, I had a stroke on December the 5th, 19. I was in the hospital until January 23rd, but I'm out and repairing. I'm getting better from the stroke, but I'm losing ground on the age.
Yeah. Well, you're looking in great health. I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your experience of the Second World War and the Battle of Normandy, especially.
Well, the Battle of Normandy, I landed, I think, about 10 days after D-Day. We were artillery, so we had to get a place to set up shop. And our first we had to take the airport, which was now the Caen Airport. It was turned to the Caen Airport after. But about 3 days of that, then we went into Caen. And as you know, the original landing on D-Day, they were supposed to be in Caen that night. Well, they got there a month later. And it was into July. And so we were in the Battle of Caen and then on to the Battle of Falaise and the Falaise Gap, where Germans escaped through the gap. But on the road, it was horrendous. We shelled them and it was terrible. All kinds of German prisoners. Anyway, we went into the Orne River and that way we're heading towards Calais. And my officer got killed. And I was wounded at the same time. And I was in a trench, and when they shelled, there was 2 men jumped in ahead of me. So I was sort of sticking above the ground, and I don't remember, nevertheless, I never would forget that. I was only 10 or 15 days out. And then we got a new officer, Goldsmith, and I was the command post officer's assistant, technical assistant. I worked with the officer, and then we went to over towards the beach. And how they took Calais was rather interesting. We were to cover with artillery, so that the planes came from England and came inland on our left, and they bombed going out. And we were supposed to start shelling and hadn't got, but not to do it until we were told. And when we fired, we were to keep them under cover. What the trouble was, the first plane that went over, they hadn't told us to start firing, and they got it. First plane went into the water. And the rest, then we started to fire, and the rest of the planes covered Calais. So Calais was liberated. Then we did Boulogne and went up along the coast. We bypassed Dieppe and went over to Belgium, to Brussels and where was the other city there?
De Bruges, maybe. But I would like to actually take this moment to introduce Thomas to you. Thomas is joining us from the United States, and he has some questions for you. So Thomas, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Hi. What kind of questions do you have for Rolly?
So Dr. Armitage, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for your service. I'm a 33-year U.S. Army veteran. I'd like to say Happy VE Day.
Thank you. I know that you were involved in the Antrim area and Antwerp area. I must be sort of met up a little bit there.
But sir, my question is, what is the funniest memory that you have during your military service?
I think the very first thing, when I landed at Courcelles-sur-Mer, and there was a lot of German prisoners around, and they were going back to England on our boat. And because that was 10 days after D-Day, and this Frenchman comes up and runs up to me, Babby, 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 doctor, doctor, doctor. Holy Lord, I was only 18 then. Anyway, so I said, what do you want? So I called my medical doctor. And what do you believe? His wife was having a baby. And I saw the whole proceedings. I saw a baby being born. And up to that point, I'd only wondered where they came from. You know what I mean? This was a hell of a learning for me. I saw a baby being born on the I think it was the 16th of the 44. And so if that lady's alive, no, she must be alive now too. Anyway, she could be very much alive. Anyway, I saw her getting delivered. And
Thomas, do you have another question for Rolly?
Then when I was up in England, up in Holland, this man came up to me in a bicycle. And he said, sir, could I get a little petrol for my car? I said, no, we don't supply petrol to the Dutch people. And he said, well, my dad makes beer. Could I trade a little beer for some petrol? I said, look, I'm not the boss here. I'm not the boss here. Come on over to those guys. What's your name? He said, Freddie Heineken. So I met Freddie Heineken, and I found out that he makes beer. And they do make beer. Those are two comical things. I think it was comical. Yeah, at least they were in the remembrance, you know what I mean? And
yes, sir. Thank you.
Another time, near the city of Eindhoven, you Americans took it, I think. And we were bypassing it on the way to Nijmegen and up to Arnhem. And I was driving a Jeep, and I thought I saw something out of my eye. It was dark at night. And there was two little wee kids in the ditch. And oh my God. That was typical of Holland, everybody being abused. So I picked the two little kids up, and I took them into our kitchen, and the chef and I, we washed them all up. We were so damn hungry and tired that I had to keep them awake. And anyway, we fed them up good, and they slept for about 24 hours, and they were with us for, I think, 10 days before I could find somebody to finally take them, you know. So when we got to near Nijmegen, I got a group, and some group took them. And then all I can remember about them is the little guy's name was Jan. And I know damn well I helped them a lot. That's all at that point. They were in bad shape. The closest house was 2 kilometers away. How they got there is beyond me. How they got to that point. It was in the open field, and so that's history.
Thomas, do you have another question for Dr. Armitage?
Yes, sir. Dr. Armitage, what was your inspiration or motivation for joining the Canadian Artillery?
Well, my dad was in the artillery in the First World War, and he got wounded at the Second Battle of Ypres, and they shipped him back to England. My mother was a volunteer Red Cross nurse. That was in 15 or whatever. No, back when, 16. And no, 15. And he got wounded right at the start of the war. And so they got married after a bit. And in 1917, my oldest brother was born. And my mother came to Canada with this baby, who 23 years later was killed in the Canadian Air Force. And I was about 15. So my brother and I said, let's go. He went in the Navy, and he did convoys going across the ocean. And I joined in 17. But then I think I was sort of military oriented in the family. It was a cause we went, you know. I can't remember back. One thing I do remember, I was at school, and I walked out to get a hamburger, and there was a lineup. And I said, saw a man in the line. I was, what are you doing? He said, I'm joining the army. I said, holy shit. So get on there. I got thinking about it for a minute. And a friend and I said, what do you say we get in the lineup? Anyway, but 2 hours later, we had a uniform. And my number was C100-222. And I said to my friend, you must be 223, because he was behind me. No, he said, I'm 227, C100-227. He said, you know that little cup they give us to go into the little room to get some urine? He said, I couldn't get into work. So, so we 3 times 5 more get in the army. So that was when we joined in 19. First of all, I joined the paratroops. When I first got out, they were looking, and I was about 4 days medical. I had a run and everything. Anyway, they shipped us to Georgia and to training. And I remember that I was there about a week, and we were running around. Finally, this man said, now hear this. And the Americans had a condition. You had to be 19 to train on their soil. So 30 of us were sent back to Ottawa, and I ended up at Petawawa with the artillery. So that was my start.
Thank you, sir.
Great. We also now have Jan Willem on the line with his children, I think.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Hi.
Oh, those are my two
Jan's
daughters.
joining us from the Netherlands.
Yes,
Do you
that's
have a
right.
question for Dr. Armitage?
Yes, we have. We live in the Netherlands, in Linden. That's a small village.
No, first of all, I went to Antwerp in Belgium, and the Scheldt estuary had to be cleaned up. So they attacked it from the bottom, like towards Belgium and France, and from the top in Zealand. So our company we liberated Bergen-op-Zoom. And then we went over and headed towards Walcheren Island. And,
okay.
And 2 months later, that's history.
Yeah.
And then we turned, and from here, we went right across Holland over towards Eindhoven Airport. The German border is only about 20 miles from the side there. So we turned left, and then went up to Nijmegen and Aram.
Jan, it looks like you have quite a few people there with you. Maybe you can tell us who you're with.
Yes, I'm there with my 2 daughters and my son. And I have also another daughter, and I live in a village near Nijmegen. So that's where we are.
Oh.
And the question that I have is...
You're in Nijmegen now?
No, yeah, close to Nijmegen, about 15 or 20 kilometers.
No.
Do you have a question for Dr. Armitage?
Yes, I have a question. My daughters, they play violin. So they want to know, was there also a music in the army?
Well, there was damn little music. We didn't really get that sort of pleasure, and I enjoy music, but very seldom. I think, I had 2 showers in 11 months, and so things were tough, and I love music. My mother was good with the piano, and I remember being on the piano, and she'd play, and we'd all sing when we were little fellows. And this day, my son plays the guitar.
Okay, nice.
And sings. He does it for pleasure. He goes around to nursing homes and wherever you want to entertain the people. And he's 70 years old now. 72. I'm 95.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for answering my question. Another question that I have, you told that you were in the Netherlands. What do you remember about the Netherlands, the being here?
Do I remember, you said?
Yeah, what do you remember
what memories do you have of the Netherlands?
Well, I tell you, when the war was over, we went back to Utrecht. Yeah,
that's right.
And then my officer had my new officer, because my other one was killed, he had hotel experience. So he got the job. They're opening the Husted Down up in Nordwijk and Sea.
Okay, yeah.
It's up by Amsterdam. Anyway, on the left, right on the beach. So he said, I want you to come along and look after the staff. So I spent from May right through to November of 45. I stayed in Nijmegen in Nordwijk.
Okay.
Do you know where Nordwijk is?
Yeah, I know. It's near Amsterdam, capital city.
It's on the way up, yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's right. It's right on the beach. I remember the Germans had a great big wall of cement beach on there. We had to blow it all up, clean the beach up. So I was there, as I said, enjoyed 6 months there.
Okay.
But I have good friends in Holland.
Really?
Very good friends in Holland. One man is Fred Hoek. He lives in Oudorp, down in New Zealand.
Zealand, yeah.
And another man, Aren Dubelair, he lives in Nijmegen. So we dialogue back and forth. And I just feel, yes. And then one lady I met became a doctor after. And yeah, a veterinary doctor.
Mm.
And Annika is her first name.
Okay.
Van Balen was her last name.
Yeah.
She, after the war, I came home. I only had grade 9, and just started in high school. So then I went to university after I came home and became a doctor of veterinary medicine, which I am in practice for 52 years.
Yeah.
In large animal practice.
Okay. So I read you did a lot of things with horses. Is that right?
You know, I'm with horses now. We have standardbred horses. My son and I. My son is on the farm with me. We call it Armstead Farm, and he has standardbred race horses.
Okay.
We can't race right now, but it looks like we're going to open.
Yeah.
90% of the betting, you see, is done online, so the people don't have to be there. We'll race the horses. So I think things are going to start. Things are going to start. They got two 3-year-olds and a yearling and a couple of broodmares, one baby born this morning.
Okay. But my question is, did they use horses during the war? The Second World War?
They were everywhere. There's Belgian horses were running all around loose. The Germans used them for drawn and everything. And then when they got bombed, the horses get loose. They were everywhere. And I remember when this French fellow was with us, and there was a sign for liquor over there. And he said, "Oh, I love that stuff." I said, "But I'm going to go and get it." So he got one of these loose horses, and he put 3 bags over of water, 3 pails of water, those jerry cans.
Yes.
Full of water on top, and he got on top, and he went, and it was a minefield. Ashong Minen was the sign, but he went across, and anyway, he come back with a whole bunch of cognac, and we had a little sup up, and my officer had been away. When he came back, we told him the story. He said, "Where'd the liquor come from?" We said, my French friend said when he went across, my Canadian French, he was with our regiment. He said, he told the story, but going across on the horse, he said, "Well, that was a minefield." And he said, "Well, it's okay for me. I was out on top, and I was covered. If I step on a mine, I'm okay. I killed the horse maybe, but I'm okay." So he said, "Well, how are you going to get back if the horse got killed?" Son of a bitch, I never take it at me. So that's another story.
We have a question from our Facebook audience. So Jana wants to know what it felt like when you got home. So after your service, when you got back to Canada, how did you feel?
Well, they had a special. I remember my officer said to me when I left, he said, "Rolly, promise me you'll get an education." Because he said, "You know what, you can handle it." And that's the first time anybody told me I was half smart. So when I got back, I went to the special school to high school. I took grade 12 and 13 in Ontario. That got me into university. And then I did a year in Toronto University. I did science there. Then I went to Guelph University and was there and got my degree. So I got my degree, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and Veterinary Surgery. So I was pretty happy. I did that because I was born on a farm, you see, and I remember the veterinarian coming when fixing up our animals and stuff, and I was impressed. So that's what I wanted to do, and I did it, and I enjoyed every day of it.
That's good to hear. So we have a very special guest, actually, from Australia. So we've been able to talk to someone from the United States, from Netherlands, and now we're going to end with Beach, who's joining us, I think, in the wee hours of the morning in Australia. Can you hear me all right?
I've been there too.
Thank you, Dr. Armitage. It's really a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. I'm very grateful, so thank you.
So what do you have to ask Dr. Armitage?
You're from Australia, are you?
Australia.
I am.
Well, my first cousin is in Brisbane. It's just, he's a doctor. He's a medical doctor. And I've been over to see him a few times. And there's hellish fires around this place right now. They've had tremendous fires. And it's north of Sydney, up along. And
yeah, I'm in Brisbane.
Yeah, you've been to Brisbane?
That's where I am.
I see. It's in, they call it, what do they call it? Something land, was it?
Queensland.
Yeah, yes. I remember going over with him. I went to visit him, and I've been to Outback. I've been to the we don't go there anymore. We can touch just. So then we left there. We went across to the island. I forget the name of the island now. It's just off from
Fraser Island.
It's a big
Fraser
island. That's a Gulf.
Beach. Do you have a question for Dr. Armitage?
Yeah, I've read a lot about the liberation of Europe, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on your interactions with the civilians as you move through the countries that were liberated, because obviously there's difference in the civilian populations and how they reacted to that liberation as well.
Well, I never had any trouble integrating back. I just forgot about the war. I went another way. I became a civilian, no problem. A lot of people use the military, I think they did, a lot of soldiers, as a crutch sort of thing. And I was the opposite. I became a civilian. I became a veterinarian. I forgot all about the war as best I could. Although I remembered it. I wrote 3 books. And I wrote 3 books just recently. And I have 3 books. One is called The Way It Was and Now. And the other book was about yesterday. And the 3rd book was all about horses, straight from the horse's mouth. And you can go on WWII Hermitage, and it's all there. It tells you all about the books. And the first book was lots about Holland and about my trip to Australia. And that's a long story. On the way to Australia, I got stopped by the Americans on the way over. And they said, "Give us your passbook." I said, no. He said, you have a stolen passbook. And I said, "What do you mean? Here's my pictures on it." And he said, "No, I know." He said, "The Canadian said your book has either been stolen or lost. So it must be figures something happened. You don't own it anymore." I said, "Well, how the hell can I get to Australia?" He said, "You aren't. You're going home." Well, I did the opposite. I went to the Canadian Embassy and a whole lot of things in LA, Los Angeles, and they helped me get a little book. So the next morning I get on the flight to Australia.
Beach, do you have another question for Dr. Armitage?
Yeah. What was the one piece of personal kit that you just couldn't do without when you were fighting in Europe.
What is it again now?
What was the one piece of personal kit or equipment that you couldn't do without?
Just a minute, my phone's ringing here. Just a minute. 1 minute. I'd have to repeat your question. I just don't understand.
Okay.
So what personal equipment that you used during the war could you not live without during your experience?
My job in the war was in the artillery. I was what we called a command post officer's technical assistant, and I had to figure out the line and range to the target. Somebody would give me the target on the map, and I used logarithms, and I knew where the gun was, so I figured out how far it was and the direction that it was to get there. And there was 2 bubbles on the gun. The gun only did 2 things, went this way or that way. And there was 2 bubbles on the gun, and you level them with what you told them to do, and the bullet will land in the right place. That was my job. And I think I was a sergeant.
Beach, do you have another question for Dr. Armitage?
Yeah, as a technical assistant, what did an average day look like for you?
Again, was it? The phone's ringing at the same time.
Working as a technical assistant, what did an average day look like for you on the line?
A technical assistant? What did they do?
Yeah, so what did an average day look like for you on the line?
Well,
what did you do throughout your day?
When I was in England, I had to take a surveyor's course. I became a surveyor, in which case I understand I could use a theodolite and put everybody online. So that was pretty much. And then when I come back, the natural thing to do was to be a surveyor here. But I didn't want to be a surveyor. All I remember was fly out in the flies and by yourself in the bush. So I didn't want to be a surveyor, so I became a doctor. And as I said, I had a stroke on December the 5th, and on January 23rd, I get out of the hospital, and I'm repairing very well. I'm getting along good. The only one problem I got, the damn age goes along, you can't stop being tall. You can't do anything about it. And the old legs aren't quite as good as they were, and a wheelchair is always good, you know. So whether I answer your question or not, that's the situation.
Oh, it does. And thank you, Dr. Armitage, again, for taking the time to talk to us. And you look in great spirits and great health. So thank you. I think that's going to conclude the conversation for this part of the day today. I'd like to thank everyone who took part. I'd like to thank our veterans, our witness, as well as all the participants who joined us on the Facebook and YouTube streams, as well as in person with us via the web technology that we've been using. I'd like to welcome you all again in a few hours for the next session with the American veterans of the war, and we'll be back then. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts that you want to share yourselves about the Second World War and the end of it and VE Day, if you have any reflections, please do so on your favorite social media platform using the hashtag #IRemember. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you very soon.